Hey, it's Guy here from Guide Adventures, and today we finally continue our journey of transforming our rumble in the ruins of the HMS Victory into something usable. The PCs have been hired to protect the admiral of the ship. And the reason for it is because the ship is heading towards one of the most important battles of the kingdom that the PCs are part of and that the ship belongs to. It's the most important battle in this kingdom's history. And if this ship is somehow destroyed, defeated, or in any other way incommoded, the whole operation fails. And the kingdom might fail too. So the PCs have been hired to protect the admiral. That's all it is. It's a fairly mundane job. Except that I imagine that this adventure would be one of 3 big adventures, creating a mini campaign within your adventure world, if you like. And so this first one is about getting to know the admiral, getting to understand the crew and the ship, as well as getting to the very first battle, the big Battle of Trafalgar, which of course won't be called the Battle of Trafalgar in our game because we will change that up. And I've already been designing the cover for the adventure, just, being homesick, kind of going, well, I can't do anything except for maybe think about some artwork. So anyway, what are we going to do? The PCs arrive on a ship, and the ship heads out, sailing out into the clouds, and it's going to take them at least 2 weeks to get where they're going. And during that time, they're going to start to notice certain things going wrong with the ship. Again, the reason for it is I always just go back to the Nemesis. What is the Nemesis planning? The Nemesis in this case is the enemy admiral of the violent opposing kingdom. Whomever or whatever that is in your campaign, that's entirely up to you, but they have an admiral of equal skill who is in charge of the enemy fleet and knows that the HMS Victory, or whatever she's going to be called, is currently en route. And so they're going to do everything they can to stop her from getting there because she's going to change the tide of battle, or force a battle, or, whatever the reason might be. So what would they do? Well, to simply start attacking the ship is futile. This is the most powerful battleship on the planet, or in the astral seas, as far as anybody knows anyway. So what are you going to do? Throw a dragon against it? The dragon's going to get decimated. 87 ballista, even at 44 ballista per side firing. 44, that's 44 times 5d10 damage. 44 times 5d10 damage. That's insane. And I'm not well enough to do the math in my head, but that's a lot of damage. That's also a lot of rolling, by the way, which is where crash, bang, crumble, the whole video comes to a pause because, well, I don't know if you find this, but I find this happens a lot. I have these ideas for these adventures and things, and I go, well, what do the rules say? Oh, they don't say anything. There's no rules on this. At least none that I know of. With regards to ship combat, if you are giving the PCs a giant, heavily armed warship, you expect them, and they expect, to use it in combat. How do we do it? We're not going to sit there for 44 rolls of a d20. I mean, that's 1980s style role-playing, folks. We're not going to do that. That's insane. So what are we going to do? Well, I wrote a book in 2019, The Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns, which would resolve this issue quite quickly because there was a lot of nautical rules there on how to condense it down and make it work. That's fine if you're playing a nautical campaign. And that's where the players are focused on that sort of thing, and they're expecting that sort of thing. But this adventure could just be dropped into your regular adventures. It could be part of your regular group, in which case then you don't want to suddenly say, oh, and by the by, here's a new rulebook that you have to go and learn everything of. It's not going to work. It makes it too painful, too chaotic, so chaotic, which is painful and chaotic. So I, just cobbled together some new rules for ship combat, based on the rules that I wrote for Lumley Castle, which was on locations and army combat, And the notion of just bringing it down, and turning the ship into a single entity, into an animal or a beast or burden, if you will. This is what Dungeons and Dragons did, by the way, which I thought was very inspired, was turning the vessel into a mount. That's what they basically treated it as. And so I wrote some rules on how to do that, and then I had to work out this, and I had to work out that, and I had to work out how you calculated how a ship works and all that kind of stuff. And so the rules that I came up with fit within the locations and the armies. So now you could pit an airship against a fortress, and you would actually have some, I think, pretty robust, but also applicable rules on just how to calculate how it would work. So those rules will be going out to the patrons this month. But once I had figured out, okay, this is how it works, you start to see how the whole thing fits together. So what you end up with is this stat block. And I'm going to go very briefly through what it means. It's just called a victory. She's a first rate. That's her class, her scale and orders. She is a scale 13. So for those of you that are familiar with the locations and army system, scale 13 is huge. She's massive. But we know this. We know that the victory was basically a floating castle, a fortress. In theory, she can give out 13 orders per turn, although that's been modified in terms of how that actually plays out. She has an armor class of 10. She's not dodging anything. There is absolutely nothing that's going on. She has 1,050 hit points. So that's useful when comparing it against a monster. She has a renown of 5 because she's fairly famous. She has morale of 13, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Morale was a mechanic that I needed to have included that strongholds and castles and armies had in the background. I've now codified that and turned that into a working mechanic so that you can attack the morale of a ship. And the reason for this is very, very simple. We know ships' morale was a major threat to the management and the owners of the ships. Ships that were at sea for too long, ships that had run out of food, ships that weren't paying their crew, ships with captains who were particularly vicious or evil. All of these kinds of things were grounds for mutiny, as well as the fact that a lot of the folks who were working on these ships were press ganged. So there was a lot of resentment to begin with. Anyway, so we've got morale now worked into there. And you can see that the victory has plus 18 to attack. And you go, wow, plus 18 to attack. She's not going to miss very much at all. And you go, no, she wouldn't. Because she's firing 44 ballista at the target. Statistically, they're going to hit. So plus 18 is actually, pretty mundane. She'd hit herself on rolling anything over a 1, which is a critical failure in my games. So, but we know this. Battleships didn't miss each other very often. That was the problem. Only at range did they miss each other. Anyway, she does 13d10 plus 12 damage. And you go, whoa. Hang on a moment. Didn't you just say that she was going to be doing 44 times 5, so 220 d10 damage? Didn't you say that that was going to be happening, which is 550 hit points of damage on average per round? And you go, yes, but that's why we needed a system. So she's doing 13d10 plus 12 damage, which statistically, when you do these math idea type of things, is about 75 to 80, 90, somewhere there. 75 to 90 damage per round. So she could take on a red dragon and not have too much of a problem. The red dragon will be hit multiple times, whereas the ship, she can be hit multiple times by that dragon. That dragon ain't doing 1,000 damage to her. Supply required 13. She requires a bucket-ton of supply. This means she's not going to be going out for a long time without resupply, and that becomes important. That becomes really, really important for us, especially when designing our adventure. And then she's got structures, as you would expect. Now, what I worked out is that certain ships, you have to have a maximum size, because if you get beyond a certain size, it just becomes insane what the vessel can do, and impractical as well. So she's got a whole bunch of stuff in there. She's got some, she's got the rum room, obviously. She's got, carpenter station, reinforced hull, barracks. She's a tough ship. A really, really, really tough ship. So that is the victory translated into my new system. Now compare that, say, for example, to the Kestrel, which is just a sloop, the smallest class of ship that you can get. She's got scale 4, also armor class of 4, 500 hit points, so it's still capable of going up against a dragon, but it will suffer significantly. Morale of 4 as opposed to 13 on the Victory. There's not a lot of crew on a sloop, so morale is very, very delicate. Quite easy to maintain, but easy to drop as well. She has attack of +5, so she could only hit herself on rolling a 5 or above. And that represents the limited number of armaments that she has. And she's only doing 8d10 +3 damage. That's still a lot of damage. 8d10 +3. Still a lot of damage there. Supply of 4, so she can go for a long time. And then she's got a gun deck and some galleys, and she's also airborne and that sort of thing. Very, 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 very small. Compare the two ships together, the Kestrel would be almost annihilated in, say, the 3rd or 4th round fighting against the Victory. And the Victory would take some damage, but wouldn't really notice too much. So with these new rules in place, it allowed me to then start to not have to worry too much about how I would handle ship combat. But it also inspired me. And that's the point of writing these things, folks, is that when you are doing these thought experiments, I wouldn't say I'm very good at writing out these rules. And I'm sure that there are people sitting there going, but mathematically this and da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, sure, fine. That's great. Whatever works for you, works for you. This will work for my table. Because my table will go, yeah, cool, this is in the spirit of the game, it's fun, and it doesn't get in the way. And we're not rolling 400 dice to try and simulate this thing. We're just rolling basic dice. The crew start to notice that our big bad has done something. And what they have done is that they have planted the seed of mutiny on this ship. So for the first week of journey, the PCs, there's nothing wrong, everything is fine, they're meeting, they're chatting, life is okay, but they're going to start to pick up rumors, because you're going to give them to them, they're going to start to pick up rumors that someone is paying crewmen to be disorderly, to start fights, to steal, to plunder. Someone is giving people access to the stores that shouldn't have access to the stores. Doors are being left open mysteriously. There could be gambling going on where the PCs hear about this dissent. They could even be invited to participate in a raid on the food stores, get the good meat that the Admiral always gets, share that with some of the crew type of stuff. Just generally dissent. And that will track back to the purser of the ship. The purser being the individual responsible for supply, for paying the crew, for looking after the finances of the ship, that sort of thing. Not a glamorous position, but a position of importance nonetheless. They did handle all of the money for the ship under the direction of the captain and the admiral. So the purser will be found basically having been bought off by the big bad to sow dissent, slow down the Victory, get her men to mutiny so she has to put in at port and pull in new people, all that kind of stuff, etc., etc. And so our PCs will hopefully put this mutiny down. The ship will have to put in at port. And I wanted to do this specifically so that players get a little bit of a sense of ship life. The ship gets put in at port, but none of the crew are allowed to leave. The PCs can leave, and they need to go and get more folk to join. This allows them to go into town. They can meet with the local townsfolk, get the lay of the land, and you can use it as a moment to ratchet up the tension. Oh, I mean, that's an impressive ship you've got there, no doubt about that. But we have heard rumors that the Dreadlord's got a new ship. Something far bigger and grander than that thing. Apparently, they wiped out an entire forest just building the mast. It's huge, apparently. So you can use that just to ratchet up the tension a little bit. And we haven't had a combat yet. So if you have a combat on the ship during the mutiny, that's absolutely fine. But town allows you to have a little bit more of a scuffle. And potentially to have a scuffle with operatives working for the big bad. They've got to signal to the home fleet, to the big bad, that stuff is happening, where the Victory is. And they could try and attack the PCs and take out the PCs. So there's an opportunity there. Then the Victory sets sail again. Everything is shipshape and Bristol fashion, as they say. We've now got our crew back. Everything is going fine. We need to do something a little bit more dramatic. And so that is where the Swarm comes in. And the Swarm is going to see two ships, two sloops, not heavily armed, but still two sloops, slowly approach the Victory. and build up tension, build up tension. And on their decks, they have these giant cages, or perhaps hanging from beneath them, they have these giant cages. All very dramatic, you see. And as soon as one of the PCs makes the perception check to see what's in the cage, they should realize that they're in trouble. Because inside that cage are giant death's head beetles, which are all looking to basically consume as much wood as they possibly can. And so our enemies then open up the cages, and these death's head beetles just swarm out towards the victory, and the PCs will have to engage with these death's head beetles. Now, I want these beetles to be giant, like 6-7 foot tall, giant pincers capable of chewing through decking quite quickly and quite easily. The whole purpose is to damage these ships, so they might as well be of decent size. So you throw in these death's head beetles, the player's got this giant combat, the ship can't shoot the death's head beetles, because targeting a single beetle is nearly impossible with a giant ship of this nature. So the PCs have to take out the death's head beetles. At the same time, the ship is busy fighting the 2 sloops that dropped off the death's head beetles, because I think the sloops would go, well, they're engaged with the death's head beetles. I think we can take some pot shots. I think we can try and capitalize on this situation. So that's what I would do there. And as soon as that has been defeated, you go, well done, you've done really, really, really well. And now the ship starts to enter into the dark areas. So wherever the battle is going to happen, the Admiral informs the PCs, look, we've now crossed the threshold, we're now in enemy territory, we are sailing towards their major mustering port where we believe that they are all based. That is when the Nemesis needs to then ratchet it up once again and send out the assassin. And the assassin is going to poison the food on board. So the food is poisoned, the rum, the water, whatever it is poisoned. Then the body of the poisoner is found with the poison. Anyway, that gives the PC something to investigate. They need to try and find who is the person who killed the poisoner. And they'll discover that the person who killed the poisoner is the actual assassin who just basically paid the poisoner to do it. And of course, there's a little kerfuffle there, and then they defeat the poisoner. I wish I had more enthusiasm, but I'm just not feeling really, really good. But this is quite a complicated adventure in terms of, this is a delivery adventure, by the way. Those of you that follow my 4 different methods, this is a delivering adventure. They have to deliver the victory to the point of the battle. The Nemesis is running out of options. And this last thing is up to you to enact if you feel like the PCs can handle more. But if the timing is now feeling like it's been just taking forever to get where they're going, it's time to change up and drop this last section. This last section is really where I went, well, the rum thing, it's been kind of poisoned, but I want to push it further. I want to do more. The barrels of brandy that the Victory took on board start to burst open with undead. There are bodies inside the barrels. Yes, just drawing straight inspiration from Lord Admiral Nelson. And so these bodies now start to crawl through the deck, and they're incredibly flammable, which of course is a major danger on a ship like this. They're incredibly flammable, and they are after the Admiral, of course. Now there's a necromancer there, and the necromancer is actually... I thought it would be quite funny if the necromancer was like a monkey or a chimpanzee or something, a pet of one of the sailors who plays a flute or a little penny whistle or something that controls the undead. I think that could be quite different. And the inspiration for that didn't come from the Victory. That just came from watching too many pirate movies where there's always a little monkey involved. Pirates of the Caribbean, for example. But yes, this sort of ape-like creature, whatever it is, plays a penny whistle or a flute or something, and that actually causes the undead to attack and operate. So the PCs can have a nice battle there with this necromantic ape. Also, they'll be looking for an NPC, a humanoid of some kind, not necessarily looking at this innocent little ape that's sitting there, you know, and the undead attack and all that kind of stuff. So that's quite fun, and I think that could happen, you know, in the dead of night. They've arrived, they can see the enemy fleet just off of the horizon there, they can see the lights all busy burning, and so this is the final moment, if you will, before the battle. They thwart all of this, and now we get to the end of the adventure. They have successfully delivered the Admiral, the Victory, to the battlefield. There's one more thing though, and this is you can drop this if you don't want to run further adventures in this battle. So they defeat the necromancer monkey thing and they're done. Great. Well done for you. We'll drop you off. You can take a skiff, you can take a little launch, and you can go back on your merry way. The final act is a hook into the next. And so the final act is that the Admiral comes to the PCs and says, "We've discovered that there's more to the enemy fleet than we anticipated. It looks as if the enemy fleet has got double the number of ships we were expecting, which means that the victory, as powerful as she might be, she just is not going to have enough punch. Now, every step of our journey, Dark Lord whatever has been dogging our tails. I don't want any more surprises. I want us to surprise him. So, I would like to ask you to please infiltrate their fleet. Give us as much intel as possible. The battle's not going to happen for at least another 24 hours. They've still got more reinforcements coming in, so do we. So unless something goes very wrong, you've got some time. Will you do it?" And that is where you end the adventure. Because then the next adventure will be the infiltration of the fleet, the discovery of all kinds of weird and wonderful things that you can come up with, not the purview of this video. And then the third adventure would be the big battle, where the information that the PCs have discovered and recovered and brought back to the Admiral is then put into place, and you have this gigantic battle that takes place. So we've got all of the elements in there. We've got new rules on how to handle ship combat. We've got potentially 2 more adventures that spin out of this one, which I like. I like those kind of adventures where it's, okay, now what's happening next? Because you can always gauge it, and if your player's like, "Oh my god, that was awful, thank goodness, can we go back to dungeons please, because I hate this?" Not a problem, there's a little skiff, off you go. You've got to get out of jail free card. At the same time, your PCs might be going, "Yes, how are we going to get onto this enemy ship? We need to steal disguises, we need to do this, we need to do that, da 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 da." Now you know you've got them hooked, and you've got another adventure to run, at least, where they're having fun. Those are my thoughts. Let's have a look at your thoughts. HLR 4th has the idea of using the rum barrels as explosives against the ship. So sending in some kind of animation spell to animate the rum barrels, to create like a rum para-elemental, what could a water elemental absorb rum and then roam around the decks, just swabbing the decks with, highly incendiary rum. That could be terrifying. I love that idea. The MFS, this is according to Luke Kibel 3146, the MFS, the Majesty's Flying Ship Victory, and the story could be that the sky battle where the PCs are fighting aboard against a rival nation, or they could be sky pirates. Floating islands should be part of this book. Perhaps it's an unfinished portion of the world where the ocean plummets. Love that idea. The Death Watch beetles could be a deadly species that swarm, so we're on the same idea of swarming there. Amrosa 10 says probably 2 Baldur's Gate 3, but it would probably be a good platform for turning back an Illithid invasion and having to face down a Nautiloid or 2. That's absolutely fine. Baldur's Gate 3, the Illithid army was under control of something else. If this is for an actual invasion of Illithid mines, it's totally up to you. I think that's a wonderful idea. Secondhand World Anvil says, I'm thinking an Aetherberg, and a sinking in the sky, a rum potion that makes you float, a plague of beetles in the cargo, so lots of thoughts there. Chademink 7731 says the HMS Devastator is under the control of Admiral Langley. The Devastator is the most powerful airship ever produced. A sniper was hired by the local Thieves Guild to kill the Admiral and take possession of the ship. Using a cursed crossbow bolt, the sniper kills the Admiral and places his body in one of the brandy barrels. Unbeknownst to the crew, anyone who taps the Admiral is transformed into a giant death's head beetle due to the curse placed on the sniper's bolt. That is a lot of fun. So those were some of the suggestions that you guys sent through. Really appreciate that, along with all of the well wishes for getting well. I really appreciate that. I do, thank you. Now you've seen what I've put together. You've seen what you guys came up with. What are you going to actually do about it? Well, I'm going to turn it into an adventure, hopefully next week. That's it. Thank you for watching. Remember to hit that like button or the subscribe button. And as always, join the Patreon so that you can have access to these adventures and the rules that I have written. Until next week, I wish you and yours the happiest of adventure creation.